Hello, and welcome to an online version of supporting our children through the transition to kindergarten. It's a big transition that you're looking ahead, and that is probably what has brought you here to this video. And it's our hope that you find in here some really practical tips and also some reassurance for the time ahead. As we get started, I want to acknowledge that here in Delta, we are on the lands of the Susquehanna and Hamoquiam First Peoples, who've been in deep relationship here with this land and all the territory that encompasses the land since time immemorial. So, as I say when I'm working with learners sometimes, as long as this has been land, the people have been here in relationship on this land, which is a pretty incredible story to tell about Delta when you think about it. It's also a story that's been disrupted in part by schooling through the residential school system, and schools have an important role to play in the task of reconciliation that we've all been called to as Canadians. And so I want to acknowledge that, and I also want to just name my hope that all families, whether you have Indigenous ancestry or whether, like me, you do not, you find a place of welcome when you get to school, that your child feels welcome, that they're honored for both who they are as an individual and also for the culture and the family that they come from. So that's my hope. As your child goes through school, you will probably notice a lot more focus on Indigenous learning, learning about Aboriginal cultures and the First Peoples of this country, and particularly this place in and around Delta. And that's a shifting focus that's probably going to feel different than when you went to school. And it's an important focus that's part of that reconciliation journey. Hi, I'm Jason. I am the Early Learning Coordinator for the Delta School District. Before that, I was a kindergarten teacher. I also happen to be a parent that lives in Delta. And my daughters, when I started doing these workshops with families, my daughters were in kindergarten and heading to kindergarten. And they are now older and graduated and or graduating as I record this video. So yeah, I have been through this transition to kindergarten myself in the same district, and I'll hopefully offer some tips both from a parent perspective and also from a teacher perspective as we go through the session. There is an e-handout that you'll see referenced on here. We'll have that linked on the website where you found this. So there you go. It has links for everything that's referenced. Okay, I want to share a little bit about my intention for our time. We live in a time when if you've got a 5-year-old, you've got family commitments that keep you busy. You probably also are juggling work commitments. And we live in one of the most expensive places in the world. So we've got money that can form a bit of a stressor on our lives. And all of that adds up to time stresses and other things to worry about. And so I want to share that the last thing I want to do with this session is add kindergarten to your list of worries. You may have come today with a little bit of worry yourself about kindergarten. That might be what's driving you to watch the video. If that's the case, I want to hopefully reassure you. I do want you to keep watching the video because I hope there's some things that are helpful in it. But I want to reassure you that hopefully that the things that matter, the things that make the biggest difference are probably the things that you're doing already, and if not, the things that you want to be doing anyways. So I hope to provide some clarity both about what kindergarten looks like and also what we can do that really does support our kids the most as we look ahead to this big transition. These are the things that families often come to this wondering about. I've done these sessions many, many times in person and online, and always give people a chance to ask their questions. I obviously can't do that in a pre-recorded session, but I'll give you the summary and hope that this lines up with the reasons that brought you here. And if it doesn't, well, you've got my email address, so you can reach out. But in general, families come thinking about, well, how can we help our kids prepare? This is a lot and does feel like it's a big transition. So what can we do? And what is kindergarten going to look like these days? I kind of know what it looked like when I went to school, but what does it look like now? And also, what skills or abilities matter the most? What are the things I might help them learn to be able to do between now and then? So those are the things I find families often ask. And like I said, if yours are not on that list, feel free to get in touch or maybe I'll answer it as we go anyways. So, in terms of what to expect, I mean, clarity is important both for our kids, but also for ourselves. And so, this is what you can expect as we head towards September. In February, probably already happened when you're watching this, but if not, in February, we do registration for the next year. And in April to June, we have our kindergarten welcoming activities. So, April to June, each school will host their own events. Sometimes it's a single event, sometimes it's multiple events, depending on the school. But always the invitation is for both parents or caregivers to attend with their children. Okay, and those happen in April and June, and you should get an email about those events from your school. In June, you will also get a letter confirming both the school supplies and September info, and that will include the timing for September and what the times of attendance will be, especially for the first couple weeks, which is a little different for kindergarten than it is for the rest of the school. So that's important to pay attention to. On the first Tuesday and first Wednesday of school, we have kindergarten family sessions. Schools call it slightly different things, but again, the intention is to give parents or other adult caregivers and the children a chance to be together on the school grounds, getting to know the kindergarten team, getting to know each other, feeling comfortable in the space. This is a big part of how we hope to transition gently into school. And so that starting on the first Thursday of September, your child will be in their kindergarten class with their kindergarten teacher. That's our goal. And then for the remainder of that first week and for all of the second week of school, we have what's called gradual entry. And during that gradual entry time, the amount of time that children spend in school gradually increases as they get more comfortable. We're going to talk about the reasons for that in a second, but I want to say that also during that gradual entry time, not just as children's time increasing, but we also use that time to get to know you. So you'll be invited to sign up for an interview time when you'll come with your child to get to know the teacher and for them to get to know you and your family. And those are really important times for just jump-starting the connection between you and your child's teacher, but also your child and their child's teacher, because it goes a long way when they see an adult that they care about, you, interacting and having a positive experience with an adult that's new to them, their teacher. So that's the gradual entry plan. It allows us both to ease kids into the process of school. Like I said, we'll talk about it more in a sec, but also for us to get to know you so that we can start on that solid footing. So I like to talk about whys of gradual entry, not because I want to justify it, but because I think it gives us a window into where our kids are at and what this transition is really all about for them. So to help see the transition to kindergarten through their eyes is why I talk about the why of gradual entry. Now, as I do that, I do want to acknowledge gradual entry is a pain for parents and families. We get it. It's difficult. I know. I've lived through it myself. I've seen other people in my family live through it. It would be nice for all of us if we could just send our kids in and have them be in school full time. But the reality of it is that would be a lot harder for a lot of our kids. And so we do gradual entry for some very specific reasons. And we really, really believe that it makes a big difference in terms of how successful they feel and how successful they are when they're getting started with school. So yes, it would be way easier for the adults if we could just send them to school full time right away. But there's some realities, both for 5-year-olds and particularly for 5-year-olds starting school, that make that a challenging thing. So we're going to talk about why in the hope that it helps us understand a little bit about this transition from their perspective. So the first piece of the why is attachment theory, and you might be an expert on attachment theory, in which case you can email me your corrections later. I actually learned about attachment theory mostly after I left the classroom and when I started in this role as early learning coordinator. And when I learned about attachment theory, I was like, oh my goodness, kids make a whole lot more sense now. This makes sense to me. And so I've been on a mission to share little tidbits about attachment with other folks that I work with, whether those are educators or parents and family members. So I'm going to share just a little bit about what attachment theory is as a way of helping us understand what our kids are going through in these big life transitions like starting kindergarten. So attachment theory, kind of like the name and the picture implies, is just the close emotional bond between two people. Really, the nutshell piece is it's the relationship we want to have with our kids. It's the relationships we have with our kids that we're always working on those relationships, but it's the ones we want to have and the ones that we do have. A little bit unlike other relationships, in an attachment relationship, there's always somebody who's looking out for and looking after, and there's always somebody who's feeling looked after and feeling cared for. So when you think about this photo, there's an older person who is doing the caring and a younger person who is being cared for. But it's that close emotional bond. It's that kind of rooted connection that we're talking about. And the insight from attachment researchers, the one that I find really helpful, is that our brains are wired to seek attachment, that we need attachment relationships. We need to feel like there are people that are looking out for us, in particular when we're young, because when we're young, we're pretty vulnerable. You can think about this evolutionarily, that when we're out in the wilds, and where you don't have sharp claws as humans, we don't have sharp teeth, we don't have very much ability to defend ourselves from things that are out there. And so we need to be near people who can protect us, and we need to be with our group that can protect us. So the brain is wired to like stay with the group and stay with the people that you know care about us. The other way to think about that is a little more spiritually, which lots of people like to, and I like to as well, in that where there's a part of us that is about community, and community is about looking after each other. And so from a very young age, we are kind of built for community and built to be looked after. And as we get older, built to look after. So both of those, I think, are good ways to think about it. But the long and the short of it is our brains, our young children, they need those attachment relationships, and they seek reminders of and strengthening of those attachment relationships. And secure attachment, like I said, this is just the relationships that we want with our kids, is when they're confident that they will get the care they need. And same thing for our relationships too. When we're confident we get the care we need, then that's a secure attachment. That's the thing that we're aiming for. Just basically the confidence that, hey, even through the ups and downs of life, even when as a child, even when my parent is saying no to me, there's a sense underneath that even though I might be really frustrated with that it's still about my best interests that they have, that they're saying no. And that confidence is an important thing. So attachment bond is really powerful. It gives kids really real things. First is actual protection, right? Because being close to the people that you care about gives you real protection. They look out for you, they watch out, they protect you when you need it. But it also, and this is particularly important as we think about kindergarten and this big transition in life, it also gives kids increased security in times of stress, right? So the bond that we have with our kids is the piece that gives them strength, is that piece that lets them feel less stress when things get stressful. And when things are new, they're inevitably a little bit stressful, right? And so they've even done studies with adults undergoing medical procedures that are painful and uncomfortable. And the study looked at how they adults rated those experiences, whether they had somebody that they knew and trusted and cared about them with them or not. And they found during those studies, probably not surprising to most of you, that people who had somebody that cared about them with them experienced that painful medical procedure much less severely than those that were alone. And the same, of course, is doubly and triply true for our kids, that your presence, your connection, or your proximity not too far away gives them a feeling of security when things get a little stressful. And attachment bonds are also really powerful for social learning. This is where we learn from the people that care about us how to be humans in the world. I've got a little video that's going to unpack this idea of attachment and independence. Because when my kids were going to school, I actually had this moment of feeling like, oh man, do I need to kind of back off emotionally a little bit? Are we too soft on them? Are we too easy on them? Do I need to become a little firmer so that they're prepared for the wilds of kindergarten? And I had that feeling even as like I said, as a kindergarten teacher. I did not try to make my kindergarten classroom a place that was, harsh at all in any way. But I just had this sense of like, are they too dependent? Do they need to be more independent? And attachment says researchers have a really important insight into attachment and independence that the gentleman in the video is going to unpack for us. He's going to be asked at the beginning that isn't it a problem if these relationships, these close relationships that we have with our kids, isn't that going to get in the way of independence? And I think he does a nice job answering it. And so I share it in part because he does that nice job, and in part to give you another perspective on this that's not just mine.
But isn't it a problem to be emotionally dependent?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's kind of a conundrum. So here's the story. John Bowlby emphasized this kind of what he called the safe haven of attachment. This is, you think of the mama mammal, going out and rescuing her offspring and bringing the offspring to safety. That's one piece of attachment. But I think of Mary Ainsworth as, if John Bowlby is the father, Mary Ainsworth is the mother of attachment theory. Mm-hmm. She was a psychologist who was a researcher, and she observed that toddlers, what they would do is they would kind of toddle away or scurry away from the mom, exploring the environment, whether it's in a laboratory or in the home, always checking back to make sure that the mom or the caregiver is there. So she called this the secure base of attachment. It's really important because this secure base provides a kind of platform for the infant or the toddler to go out and explore the world. So the point is that when the child feels safe and secure, they're more capable of going out in the world and exploring and learning. So actually their ability to depend on the caregiver fosters a kind of independence because they're confident that if they run into trouble, they're going to be able to resolve it and get the help they need. So actually children who are securely attached appear to be most independent.
So I hope you find that reassuring, but also offers some insight into how we can really help our kids as we look ahead to this big transition in kindergarten. This is a graphic that puts together those ideas that he was talking about. This is from a group called the Circle of Security, who work down in Seattle with parents and educators to just share attachment-related resources and help folks do the job they're trying to do, whether that's as a parent or a teacher. And I love this graphic, so I share it with lots and lots of people. And on the top, you will see that idea of the secure base that launches our kids out. And this is, as you think ahead to kindergarten, these are some things that you can think about. How are you currently supporting your child's exploration? What are the things you're watching over them as they try for the first time or do for the 100th time? What are the things that you're delighting in them, that you're excited about? What are the things that you can help them do that they can't already do already? What are the things that you can just enjoy with them? Enjoy those new experiences. So that's that secure base. As he talked about in the video, that's the launch pad that we give kids that confidence to go out and explore and try new things and have new experiences. And there's moments when our kids need to come back to us, and they come back to that safe haven where we are giving them that feeling of protection, where we're comforting them, where we're delighting in the things that they tried, even when those things didn't work out, and where sometimes we're even organizing their feelings. That's the fancy word for, when your kid comes home and they just lose it. They have like this meltdown and all of a sudden things are flying and in your big loud noises and you're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? What's wrong? And it turns out often they can't even tell you what's wrong. They don't even know why they're upset. That's the helping organize their feelings, where it's like, oh, wow, this is feeling really big. Maybe you're actually just tired. Maybe you've been out holding it in all day and you just came home and you just feel safe enough to let it all out. And you need me to sit with you and breathe with you and help you make sense of that. And maybe there is actually some other feelings beyond just tired. Maybe you are frustrated that something's not working or that you're not able to do what you hoped. All those types of things. So it's that two rhythms of sending our kids off and then welcoming them back in. And like I said, I hope that's helpful to think about as we consider this transition to school. We are their excited launch pad who's like, yes, you go out there, you try this new experience of school. And we're ready to welcome them back in because it's actually the same rhythm all the way through. We're sending them off and they're coming back. Our role just shifts a little bit as kids go to kindergarten, just because they're often away from us for a little bit longer. But they still need us at the end of the day to both be celebrating that exploration and that new experience and welcoming them back in. So that's the rhythm of attachment that I hope helps as we think about gradual entry and the beginning of kindergarten. We can think about, yes, they're going to be excited about those times, and yes, they're going to want those times to reconnect back with us. It's also one of the reasons why in September we actually recommend not planning a whole lot of other things to do after school and in the evenings. Yeah, sign up for one or two things. I would say one actually. But if you've got something going on every night, every day after school or in the evening, that's a lot of time pressure to be rushing to get to those things. But it's also a lot of, you may find most families do, that kind of interrupts that reconnecting time, that recharging time that our kids need, that just being in their safe space with their safe people to kind of process the day and get recharged for the next day. So we recommend limiting to one after school activity, giving that a try for the first bit. And then as things start to feel more comfortable as the year goes along, feel free to explore more options. But that's our recommendation. Just as you see in that graphic, there are lots of opportunities in there to play together. That when we're exploring things and sharing things with our kid, we're really doing a lot to nurture our relationship. We can also be modeling the qualities we want to encourage, like creativity and patience and empathy and listening to others. And we can extend their knowledge and skills. So there's a ton of power in playing together. There's also a ton of power in them playing on their own that we'll talk about as we go through. But both are really valuable. And I share this just to reinforce this idea that as September approaches, one of the most powerful things we can be doing to support our kids towards that transition is to be spending time with them, is to be nurturing that relationship that we have with them, and is to be using those times when we are with them to encourage that creativity and listening and empathy, and other social skills that we're working to build in them. So just a really powerful context, and I share it just because I don't ever want parents to feel guilty that, oh, we're out there kicking the ball and we should be sitting at home practicing the alphabet or any of those kinds of things. I don't want you to have those guilt. Yes, alphabet matters, and we'll share that in a sec, but anytime that you're playing and interacting positively with your kid is setting them up for success in the fall. So just a little summary slide. Attachment gives both caregivers. This is an idea from Gordon Neufeld, who's a Vancouver psychologist, works with parents and educators too. And he's said this, and it stuck with me, that it's attachment, it's those relationships that give us the license to teach or parent. That's where a kid's responsiveness to us comes from. And it also gives kids this safe base to explore the world. So super powerful. To think about. And I hope you see in that there's a connection to gradual entry because we are sending our kids off to explore this new space of school. And they're returning back to us to get rest and recharge. And then we're sending them off to explore a little more school. And then they're coming back to us to get celebrated and feel confident for the next step. Sometimes kids, as they go through gradual entry, say, I want to go to school for even longer. And when they say that, I want you to think about that. Okay, that's a win. Because there will come a time somewhere near the end of September, maybe, or maybe not that far, but where kids look at you and go, oh, I got to go to school again? Because kindergarten, as much as we do our very best as teachers to make it a smooth transition, to make it a age-appropriate environment, it's just a lot for most kids. They do find it a lot. Part of that is because, like this picture shows, there are 20 of them, and one, or there's another adult in there, usually one teacher, sometimes another adult that's working in the class some of the time, but 20 of them and one of us, and it's a lot for kids to get used to that rhythm of school. Even if they've been to preschool or daycare in the past, it's not so much, I don't think it doesn't seem to be at least about the amount of time they're used to being away from home. It's just the amount of time in school, in the school setting, that feels like a lot, and it takes a while for them to get used to. So let's think about that school setting a little bit from a child's perspective. They have one new adult. They don't know this adult. They may have met them, but they probably don't have a close relationship, except in a few rare cases. So there's going to be that one new teacher that it takes time for them to build a relationship with. It takes time for them to trust that new adult. And it's really normal for 5-year-olds, especially, to be a little cautious around new adults who aren't their attachment people. It's normal for them to look to their attachment people and to steer a little clear of the people who aren't their attachment people. That's a really normal 5-year-old response. And so that's something they have to get used to in kindergarten. The other kindergarten reality is that they have not just the classroom, but they have 5 to 7 other unfamiliar environments that they have to learn how to be successful in and what's expected of them in. So there's the classroom, there's often an outdoor space where they are playing, sometimes multiple outdoor spaces. There is the place where they hang up their jackets and backpacks, which may be in the classroom, but often is just outside the classroom. There's the hallways that we walk through in school. There's the washrooms, wherever they happen to be in the school that your child attends. They're probably close to the classroom, but they're again a different space. They may or may not be shared with some other students in the school, again, depending on the building. We have the gym space, we have the library space, and sometimes a multi-purpose room space that kindergarten classes also visit. So we have lots of new spaces to get used to, and all of those new spaces will have their class of students, sometimes more if they have some parts of their day that are shared with other kindergarten classes. And lots of all those new spaces have different ways of doing things, and they need different ways of doing things, in part because there's 20 of them and one of us. And so as teachers, we need really strong routines for how to enter the space, how to leave the space, what to do in the space. And we work really hard in September to build kids' familiarity with what to do in those environments so that they can be independent and successful. But of course, it takes time for them to learn those because they're unique to those particular spaces. And so gradual entry really helps us break down the steps of how to be successful in these different spaces, because it inevitably is a little different than their prior experiences, and even varies school to school. So a lot for kids to get used to when they're starting school in a way that I think is kind of hard for us to wrap around as adults, because as adults, we spent so much time in school for the most part that it just feels like it's obvious what school's about. And it's kind of intuitive how to operate in these types of spaces. But for 5-year-olds, that's not the case. They don't have that same experience. And they are constantly, not just for school, but they're constantly in life entering into spaces where they don't know how to be successful. But the beginning of school just really concentrates that. So thinking about it through their perspective, I think helps us see, oh yeah, it's a lot to get used to when you're starting school for the first time. On top of all that to get used to, there's also the reality of separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is really, really common. It's really normal. There are lots and lots and lots of 5-year-olds that experience some separation anxiety. And so I share a little bit here about that because you may have a child that's a little prone to separation anxiety, in which case, as we'll talk about, there are some things we can do. And I also want you to know it's just part of their life and not about things that you've done wrong. So we'll talk about that, but we'll talk about it because I think it gives the rest of us, even if our children aren't going through some separation anxiety, it gives us a little window into 5-year-olds and how we can support them, also how we can support other children and families whose children are going through separation anxiety. So a little primer on separation anxiety. First of all, children periodically experience developmental peaks in separation anxiety. So you may be approaching September thinking, oh, they had a little separation anxiety when they were 3, but they haven't had that for so long now. They'll be just fine. That may be the case. It also may be the case that it surprises you and comes back. Um, Children most typically have separation anxiety when it's an unfamiliar situation. It's much more likely to rear its head. And also, it goes up and down with kids in terms of whether they're more likely to be anxious or in a more settled space. And there happens to be a documented developmental peak in separation anxiety right around 5 years old. That means that there's a time they're less prone to it before 5 and a time they're more prone to it during 5. And so you may think that's past you and it may actually come back. Just a heads up, so that we're not so surprised. We have a lot of baggage in our culture around separation anxiety, and I want to reassure you that children with a healthy bond to their parents will often experience some separation anxiety. So just because your child has some separation anxiety does not mean that you've done something wrong as a parent, or even that there's something wrong or a problem with them. It's often just part of children's normal experience, even when they have those healthy relationships, and even when they are kind of in a healthy emotional space themselves. So I want to reassure you that this is really normal and that we should expect this and we can help work through it. A lot of it has to do with kids' temperament. Some children just approach a new experience or setting excitedly, while others just cry and tend to cling to their parent. I call the first ones 2-foot kids, where they tend to jump into new things. You take them to a new birthday party and they see it and they're all excited and they're already in there doing the thing before you've even scanned the room and saw what's going on. While other kids enter that type of new space and they step back and they might hang on to their parent's leg or even tuck behind their parent. And those children take a little longer to warm up to that new experience. Not surprisingly, those kids that dive into those new experiences and settings excitedly, those kids tend to have a pretty easy time starting school. While the more wait and watch, the ones that are more likely to cry and cling to their parent, they have a bit of a harder time going to school. But this is again another place where we have some cultural baggage around this. We tend to overvalue the kids that jump in and do new things. But I always ask the parents who, when I'm in person sessions, hey, what's it like to have a kid who jumps in and does new things right away? Is that easy all the time? And they all laugh and go, no, that's not easy all the time. Because those kids have a lot to learn about, oh, sometimes I do have to slow down. I got to think about whether this is a good idea or not. I got to think about whether my family would be proud of me for doing it. Those type of things. Because there are times right now when we want them to be a little safer, maybe, but also times in the future when we want them to make more slowed down, thoughtful choices. Uh, on the other hand, kids who are more wait and watch, who tend to be a little more hesitant to try new things, they often have a harder time going to school. But there are other times when they have it easier because they already slowed down, they already waited, they were already hesitant to try that new thing that maybe wasn't a great idea. So there's advantages and disadvantages in different situations for different temperaments. And what I want to hope to convey is that we need to celebrate who our kids are, regardless of who they are. And we can also help them learn about who they are and learn about what strategies will help them navigate life. So separation anxiety, if we can approach that way, is a much, much healthier way to do it. Incidentally, those temperament differences about new experiences, how we approach new experiences, those are pieces of our personality that tend to be with us from very early stages all the way into adulthood. So adults watching, you will recognize in yourself How do you approach new experiences? Some of you are those 2 foot people who are like, yep, I'm in. I'm always looking for the new thing to do. Some of you are like, no, I really prefer my routine and I kind of have to be encouraged out of that routine in order to try something new. And some of you are somewhere in the middle, and that's the same for our kids. So those temperament differences really do impact how we experience the beginning of school and separation anxiety. And then this last piece is kind of what I've already alluded to, that instead of feeling like we just have to get through separation anxiety or rip off the Band-Aid or really try to avoid that metaphor, we really want to think about, how can we help to them learn about themselves, to deal with those feelings of anxiety when they come up, and then become more independent? Because if they're more independent, then they've learned about themselves and they've got some strategies for what works for them. Okay, so that's really how we want to think about handling separation anxiety. If you're curious about separation anxiety too, I'm going to share, we have a workshop and a whole bunch of materials also hosted on the Preparing for Kindergarten District website. So these are the tips for if you're thinking about anxiety. Really, all of us have a little bit of anxiety, especially leading towards new things. There's usually a little bit, but these are the things that make the biggest difference. And these are true for both kids who have some anxiety, but also for the rest of the kids. Just helps in general. So these are my top tips as you're approaching school. The first one is just to talk about it. Again, it's that idea that clarity is going to help them know what to expect. And there's a little positive sign aft in brackets there because we want to try to keep that talk positive. There's 2 ways that negative talk sometimes slips in. One of them, I'm going to blame uncles for this because I happen to be an uncle, is uncles, trying to be cool and saying things like, oh, school's starting. I guess your life is over. Or, oh, you got to go to school again. Bet you'd rather not. We say things like that. We say things that kind of make school sound like something kids shouldn't like. But the reality is, even though kids take a little while to adjust to the energy of school, for the most part, 5-year-olds really love school. They enjoy kindergarten. They have a lot of fun at kindergarten. And so we want to try to keep our talk about school positive. They can maybe, as they grow older, maybe they'll develop some of those attitudes about school that see school as not cool and not fun. But for 5, that can wait. The way that the not being quite as positive as we would like can kind of slip in unintentionally sometimes is we will use school to try to get our kids to do something they can't do yet. So we'll say something, let's say they're a messy eater. We'll say something like, oh, when you get to school, you can't eat messy like that. And as we do that, without even thinking about it, we've set up this step of kindergarten as to be this thing that's maybe a little scary, maybe something where they won't fully be welcomed or won't fully be accepted, or maybe something that they won't be able to do or handle. So we want to avoid that talk. Certainly, if you want to work on your child becoming a tidier eater, that's a fine goal, but just don't use school as the reason they have to do that. So I hope that makes sense, as in just a reminder to just be positive about school. But do give them lots of information about school because, as I said, they haven't been to school yet. We often, as adults, forget how much we know about school. And so we can think that everybody shares that knowledge, but our kids don't yet. So just talking about school helps give them some clarity about what to expect. Um, Being present in the space can also help them feel comfortable. So visiting the school between now and September, going to the playground, going to kick the ball or throw a disc around the field, any of those kind of things can really help. And of course, attending the school's welcome events where you can actually get inside the building and meet some of the people that currently work there makes a big difference to have those positive experiences at or close to where they will be attending school. Try even just making a point of walking by or driving by the school and saying, hey, there's your school. Let's give it a wave. Those kind of things really matter. Share some details about what the day will look like and the fun thing your child's going to do at school. In a couple of slides, I'm going to show you what a typical day in kindergarten. And the invitation is just to talk about, especially about the things that they're going to enjoy. So do that. somewhat less intuitively is to talk about what your day will look like. Believe it or not, when your kids are having some anxiety at school, it actually really helps them to be able to picture you and what you're doing. And sometimes, as the adult caregivers, when our kids go to school, that means things shift a little bit for us. So maybe your work situation is going to change a little. The amount of work or where you work might change. And that's all, you know, to be expected as our kids kind of transition through life. But giving them that clarity about what we're doing day to day can really help them. Don't make it sound too exciting because they may be like, I want to go and be with you for that. But do tell them what your day is going to look like. Incidentally, on those kind of life transition plans, any of those transitions like starting a new job, moving houses, those all create a sense of kind of stress and anxiety in a family system. So just being aware of that. And if you can, it's always more ideal to schedule those big transitions to not all happen at the same time. Not always possible, but starting school is a big transition. So one of the things to pay attention to is, let's say you are going to start a new job or take on different responsibilities at work. It would actually probably make the most sense, if possible, to do that either before kindergarten starts or a little bit after kindergarten starts, just to avoid kind of the feeling that everything's not quite normal. Because even though we tend to think, oh, those kind of things don't really affect our children, they kind of do. Even when kids just know that some change has happened, it introduces a level of uncertainty and anxiety for them. So, anyways, that was a bit of a bird walk, but do spend time talking about what your day is going to look like because it does give them that sense of security when they're at school. And then in particular, the times to focus on too are the transitions. So the beginning of the day and the end of the day. What are those going to look like? If you already know what those are going to look like now, you can already start planting those seeds. Talk about what school mornings are going to be like. When are we going to get up? What are we going to do? Are they going to see you when they get up? Who's going to get them their breakfast? Who are they going to go to school with? Who's going to drop them off? And who's going to pick them up? And what's going to happen? Is it going to be the same every day or is it going to change different days? Just starting to talk through what that beginning and the end of the day are going to be will give them a lot more sense of security. The beginning of the day, because they'll know what to expect and they'll have that picture in their head of how this is going to work. The end of the day, because they'll have that clarity about what they're looking forward to. They'll know when they're going to get to reconnect and recharge with you, and they'll know what else is coming up for them. And then the last tip in terms of anticipating anxiety is just to read stories about school. Again, this is part of that talk, just giving some clarity about school. So the little caveat is try to keep them positive stories about school. So try to avoid the books for now, maybe that have people not getting along at school or maybe a friendship problem at school. Just try to get the positive school stories about school where kids are having a good experience. Maybe they're feeling a little bit nervous, just like your child as they head into school, but then they realize school's all a safe place and a fun place. So look for those stories. You certainly don't have to buy them. You can go to your local library. They are great at finding those books, and they can help you with that, or talk to other parents who've already got some books that they may have collected through having their children go to school. So anyways, that's my last tip. In terms of experiencing anxiety, like I said, some of you may be thinking, oh yeah, this separation anxiety, that's something that I'm going to be working through. Maybe I'm already working through that with my child right now. Some of you might be like, you know what? I don't think so. Well, I invite you to think about this, whether it's anxiety or any strong feeling. We can kind of think about this in the same way. So here we go. When kids are experiencing anxiety, the first thing is we need to acknowledge feelings and we need to express confidence that they can get through those feelings and they can handle it. So I'll tell you a little story. When my daughter was heading off to kindergarten, she did, and we had signed her up for one after-school activity. She was going to go to Sparks. And I was teaching kindergarten at the time, and I was going to drop her off at Sparks. Now, my daughter's a pretty confident person. She's out there doing her thing, but she actually is a bit of a wait and watch kind of person when it comes to new experiences. The thing is, I wasn't used to seeing her in a lot of new experiences. For the most part, I saw her in experiences that were pretty familiar to her. So I actually wasn't expecting this Sparks situation to create some anxiety. So I was ready to drop her off at Sparks, and I was thinking I was going to get her in there and I was going to go home and cut the lawn because it was September and the lawn had been growing and it needed cutting. So here I am ready to drop her off, and I'm going into my school. That's actually at the school that I taught at, and it turns out that one of the leaders was one of the teachers that I taught with. So all kinds of familiarity for me, but blind spot on, not for my daughter. So I'm dropping her in there, dropping her off, and ready to go. And I've got this lump attached to my leg, and she's hanging on for dear life. And that surprised me. What I felt like doing in the moment was actually not this piece of acknowledging feelings and expressing confidence. I actually felt like not acknowledging. I felt like prying her off because I felt like, oh my goodness, everybody is looking at me. And as a teacher in the school, I actually had my own anxiety that I wasn't prepared for either. I felt like this is not supposed to be happening to me. Um, and so I felt like prying her off my leg. I felt like saying, no, this is ridiculous. You're not having this feeling. Get in there and do this thing. That's what I felt like doing. Even though I had told so many parents that I'd worked with over the years, no, no, don't worry about this. This is totally normal. It turns out my own experience had led me to uncover that maybe I didn't believe it was quite as normal as it actually was. So I share that with you, both to share my own experience and the guilt that can sometimes go with it, and to reinforce this idea that I needed to not do those things I was feeling about. I needed to acknowledge her feelings and express some confidence. So what I managed to do in the moment, despite that inner voice inside me saying that, no, get her off you, get out of here, I managed to say, okay, you're having a big feeling right now. You're feeling worried about this. I get that. And so we shuffled over to the side, they're clinging to my leg, and I worked on some breathing myself. I started to do some breathing and I said, hey, okay, we're going to get through this. You're going to enjoy this. This is going to be fun. So I was acknowledging that that feeling she was having was real. And I was expressing confidence that she was going to be able to get through it. And part of how I really express confidence is by getting through it with her. And that's mostly how we build separation anxiety plans. So my plan was, I had to make it up on the moment, but after that, I was able to talk to the leaders and make sure we were all on the same page. The plan was I would move over to the side so that we weren't blocking the door, and I would work on my breathing. And as she felt ready, she could join or she would feel my breathing and start to breathe herself. And as her grip started to relax on me, I would start to point out the things that the group was doing, and talk about them and talk a little bit about what the leaders were doing and what the other kids were doing. And then as she relaxed even more, I would have her join, and then I would leave once she was able to join. So that was the plan. And it had that sequence of separation, which went from her latched very tightly onto me to her joining the group and me saying goodbye and leaving. I had a role. Okay? My role was to breathe. My role was to say some reassuring words and to point out what the other kids were doing. She had a role, which was to join in. Okay. And to notice in herself when she was starting to feel more relaxed. And the teachers had a role, in this case, the Sparks leaders. Their role was to keep going with the rest of the program and occasionally look over and kind of give a little wave and just keep inviting her into the group. So we all had roles. The next piece is just we have to communicate that plan. What are we going to do when we have these big feelings? And then we have to stick to that plan. As I said, we're going to do a longer workshop in June. And there is a recorded version on the website as well to work through some separation anxiety things. But we offer this little tidbit of just how we can help in those anxious moments. Okay. So to sum up, in gradual entry, we're really working to maximize the number of kids that have a successful start. And we're really building kids' capacity to explore that new environment of kindergarten. We're creating community and familiarity, and we're really working hard to build attachment between teachers and students. So there's a lot that's going on in these first 2 weeks of school. And like I said, it is a pain in the butt for parents. We get it. But it really does, for the reasons that I've talked about, it really does make a big difference in terms of how many kids feel like there's a successful start to school. And it's not just for the individual kids that really, really benefit. like all kids benefit because whenever we create that calmer, more settled situation, everybody feels calmer. So we really believe that it makes a big difference. As they get into school, this is what they're going to find. As I said before, clarity is really helpful. It's easy to underestimate how, or overestimate, that is, overestimate how much our kids know about school because of how much time we spent in school. So, just as a little preview, these are the things that typically kids experience most days in kindergarten. They have lots of centers, and we call centers playtime, where they are exploring things in the room, where they're maybe building with blocks, like these little folks in the upper left. We have lots of reading experiences where kids are reading books on their own. Actually, that's the book time at the bottom, but where we're also reading books to the class. We do lots of art and emergent writing. Emergent writing is just the fancy word for kids representing things on paper. Maybe they are doing with crayons or felts. Maybe they're drawing a picture. Maybe they're adding some scribbles. Maybe they're starting to print some letters or even some words. Emergent writing just doesn't quite look like conventional writing yet, but it is them putting something down to express themselves. We have whole group time where we're gathered together, usually on a carpet, and we might be singing songs or games. We have lots of oral language development time focus throughout the day where we're trying to extend the amount that they're talking. We're trying to introduce new vocabulary to them. We are exploring different topics connected to the world and learning about the words and the language that goes with those topics. We're practicing taking turns in conversations, all those kind of things. We do outdoor play, which both looks like time on the playground, but also often looks like exploring different parts of the school ground or a natural space or park space somewhere near the school. And then we have that independent book time. So my invitation with this typical day in kindergarten is for you as parents to look at this list and go, where are they going to find the most connection? Where are they going to feel most at home? Where are they going to feel like, yeah, that part of the day is for me? And talk about those things as you head towards school. Talk about how much fun they're going to have playing outside and enjoying the playground and learning to do the monkey bars. Or if they're more of a art kind of kid, talk about how they're going to get to do art and maybe paint or draw with crayons and felts and represent things on paper. So talk about the things that really resonate for them. Talk about the other things too. Don't make it sound like they're going to spend the whole day outside because that is not the case, or that they're just going to get to do art all day long because that is also not the case. But do talk about the parts, play up the parts that they're going to feel really successful, and share the other things too. The other way I like to use this list is to invite people to think, which parts of this day are they going to feel a little less at home in? Which parts are going to feel like a bit of a challenge for them or the other people that they're working with? And if you're thinking about some of those parts, you could think about, well, in the time between now and September, which how could I help them gain some skills or gain some comfort or familiarity so that those parts of the day feel more comfortable to them, that they feel like they know what to do and know how to find some enjoyment for themselves in those times of the day. So you can use this list both ways, both for the what are the times I'm going to play up to give them that sense of confidence and looking forward to school. And you can also use it for yourself to think about, are there some things I can help them become or some ways of being I can help them adopt so that these times of the day feel at home in, they feel at home in too. So we're going to talk about some of the things that can make a big difference during that day. And as we do that, it's easy for this word ready to slip into our minds. You might have noticed that I've really tried hard not to use the phrase ready for kindergarten or readiness, because I really try to avoid that phrase for a whole bunch of reasons that that I've shared on this slide. Because I don't want to focus on that. I do want to focus on development and learning. What are typical progressions that we can help our kids learn through and in? And I want to kind of name the reality that in kindergarten, we have inclusive classrooms in our public schools. That means if you are eligible to come to kindergarten, if your birth date is if you're turning 5, right? That's what makes you eligible for kindergarten. There is no list of things you have to be able to do. There is no list of criteria. There are no entrance exams. You're ready for kindergarten because your birthday says you are. And that a range is normal. A range is really normal. If you think about your child um, right now, what they're doing compared to a year ago, it's a big difference, right? And we have that full year of difference in our kindergarten class. So even within one child, 1 year makes a big range, right? And across children, across different biologies and different experiences, that normal is an even bigger range. So we have to expect a range, and it would not be fair to say to any extent that every kid coming into kindergarten needs to be able to do the same things. It's just not realistic. They've only lived 5 years, so the full year is 20% of their life. Um, Plus the other differences that we have to expect. Some kids just learn certain things faster than others. That's really typical. So we want to be concerned as teachers with responding to where they're at. We want to be concerned with noticing, oh, this is right where you are. I can help you take that next step. That's what we call responsive teaching. The other reason I don't love the term readiness is because it makes it kind of seem like, oh, well, there's this big moment of being ready for kindergarten. But really, it's just one transition. Yeah, it's a big transition for our kids. But it's not like if you are quote unquote ready at the beginning of school, that you will then be ready for all the other transitions. We want to think about longer term outcomes, long term success. That's our goal. So I try to avoid that term readiness and encourage you to avoid it in your own thinking. This isn't about getting our kids ready for kindergarten, but it can be about paving the path for them. So just thinking about enabling success. When we think about our kids, think about what we want for them. How are we helping them stay on that track moving forward, right? Thinking about what their next step is and what they're able to accomplish next with a little bit of help and support. That's what we want to keep our focus on. We also want to think about, are there some unnecessary pressures? Are there some things I can front load for you so that when kindergarten comes in the fall, kindergarten feels a little more comfortable, and then you feel more confident, and then everything snowballs from there, and you stay on track moving forward. So that's what we want to think about. We want to think about helping our kids keep moving forward, and we want to think about, can I, as a parent, are there some things barriers I can remove or obstacles I can remove ahead of time? Okay. So this is my attempt, our attempt as a district really, to answer those questions about what are the things that make the biggest difference when kids go to school. I'm going to walk through what's in this brochure. The brochure is also available in the handout and on our district website. But because for a long time, parents continue to ask, okay, Jason, what matters? What are the things that make the biggest difference? And so this is our attempt to answer that. When you look at the list, and when I go through them today, you may look at it and go, wow, they've got almost all of those. Or conversely, you may look at that and go, oh, there's a lot on here they are not able to do yet. Either way, I want you to remember that the invitation is exactly the same. The invitation is what's shown on the slide here. What are one or two things that you might want to focus on to help your child feel more capable and confident? Okay? Don't get caught up in how many they can or can't do. Just think about it in terms of, what are the things that might make the biggest difference? Okay. We share them with you, not as a checklist, but as an invitation to think about, what are the things that matter? What might I choose to focus on? Okay. And again, thinking back to the different parts of the day, you can use that as part of your lens too. Regardless of what you choose to focus on, we uh, we follow particular steps when we're helping somebody learn something new. Now, this isn't new to you. I'm not sharing this and you're going to go, oh my goodness, Jason, I've never heard of anything like this before. No, no, not like that at all. This is something that probably all of us are familiar with because we've done it hundreds of times already and been quite successful with this process of learning something new. Okay? It's also something probably in our busy lives that we have skipped over a little bit sometimes, that we have rushed, that we've kind of forgotten about or hoped we didn't have to do for that skill or that new thing, that we just hoped they'd figure it out. And so I think it's worth reminding how we can be successful when kids are learning something new. Our most likely path to success is following this gradual process of first showing them what it looks like, right? We need to show them what success looks like. So in this picture example, tying our skates or tying our shoes, we need to show them what it looks like. So having them see what we do to be successful is a big step. And in this time when we're showing them and making it explicit, we are doing a lot of modeling. We're just showing them what it looks like. We're instructing, we're explaining it. We're giving them some directions if they're starting to do it themselves, but it's very direct instructions. They're not really independent without us telling them exactly what to do. We're demonstrating and we're giving examples. And so in this beginning phase, we're just making it clear what success looks like, right? Then we enter into this phase. Sometimes I call it like the flight simulator phase, where we're ready to do it together, but it's just practice and it's low stakes. That's the flight simulator piece. If you crash that plane, nothing actually crashed. So we're doing very practice where we've got it's not high stakes, like I said, and there's lots of safety built into it. There's no like urgent need to get it right. So in this developing phase, we might be doing things like role playing where we take on a role, a rehearsing, where we pretend what we're going to do if when this happens in the future, right? So this is a guided support phase. We're able to talk it through. There's no time pressure. There's no success pressure. We can just take it as it comes, and support them with it. Role play sometimes looks like them directing us, like, okay, you tell me what I should do if when cousin Benny comes over, he wants to play with a favorite fire truck. What should I do? Right. So they take on the role of the adult, telling us what we should do and telling us what some ideas. Or sometimes role playing looks like, okay, I'll pretend to be your cousin. You be you, and let's pretend what this looks like. So it's a much kind of safer, more artificial phase that we go through before we're expecting kids to be independent. And then in this third phase, this is when we're around to help. We're close by. We're ready for them to take some of the steps, but we still have a really important role in terms of that timely support. We're going to suggest things to them. We're going to remind them sometimes. We're going to do some prompting, monitoring, and we're going to ask for elaboration. For me as a parent and also as a teacher, what was really helpful for me to remember was when I saw the word reminding attached to this third phase, because there were often times when I was like, oh man, I'm doing a lot of reminding. And then I had to realize, oh wait, maybe that's not on them. Maybe that's on me. Maybe I need to go back to the first few phases and make sure that they really know what success looks like and that we've done that practice phase so that we can get to the phase where a little bit of reminding actually leads to success. So I offer that little insight that at least helped me, that when I was reminding a lot, it was maybe a sign I needed to go back and slow down this process of learning something new. Okay, so that's the nutshell piece. I'm going to work through an example of that with you in terms of children's personal social development. So back to that Preparing for K brochure that I talked about. These are some of the things in the personal social development category. These are some of the things that make the biggest difference when children come to school. If they can listen to an adult, if they can comply with reasonable adult requests from a known and caring adult, if they can follow verbal instructions to complete a task, if they can wait patiently for their turn, right? Because there's 20 of them, so they're not always going to have their turn right away. If they can separate from their primary caregiver, and some separation anxiety is, like I said before, is normal and okay, but if they've had those experiences of separating that they've had success on, then they can draw on those even if they have separation anxiety again. If they have some experiences handling strong feelings and getting through them, usually getting through them with the support of an adult. That's usually how 5-year-olds get through their strong feelings and feel like they have some success doing that. But do they have those experiences and know when to seek you out when they have those big, strong feelings and know how they can get some help from you to handle them? And also playing independently. So can they play independently on their own without an adult? Those also super important for their own development. In terms of the opportunities, because that's what we want them to be able to do eventually. Like I said, some of them will be able to do those things right now already, and some of them will be taking a little bit more time. Either way, same invitation. Choose one or two, perhaps. One or two of the whole list, not just from that screen. You'll see more in a sec. But we have those things that we want kids to be able to learn. And we have, well, when are the good times to learn those? When are the opportunities that make the biggest difference? And so we have things like unstructured playtime. We have pretend and dramatic play. Doing those with our kids and giving them chances to do those things really help with their personal social development. We have creative and construction play. We also have adult-led programs, things like Parks and Rec, like Roaming Rascals, the library programs, Family Place, or Strong Start. Playing card and board games can really help, and reading stories and naming feelings. Naming feelings, incidentally, super powerful to be giving our kids lots and lots of feelings vocabulary. They've even done studies, again, with adults, that adults who have a bigger feeling vocabulary actually do better handling the ups and downs of life. The more feeling words we have, the better we have to navigate those feelings and emotions that come with life. You can think about it maybe as like, if I don't just know angry, I also know annoyed or perturbed. Perhaps that helps me notice when my anger or even bigger feelings starts to get a little bit less. And now I'm just annoyed by that. Or now I'm just perturbed. And I think if you can say perturbed, probably, you can handle it. So that's maybe one thing. But anyways, it's never too early to start giving our kids a big feeling vocabulary. It does actually help them. Okay, so this is just a worked example using that gradual release model that I showed you of handling strong feelings. So I was thinking about a person that I had a lot of experience with. And the opportunities that I saw were board games, because when we were playing board games, when we would lose at the board game, that would often elicit some strong feelings. Playtime at Strong Start, sometimes sharing was a little tricky, or when things didn't work, like the tower fell down. Those were also a time when we experienced some strong feelings. And then certainly we had some big feelings around the TV transition. Okay, whenever the TV got turned off, there were some big feelings. Okay, so what was I going to do? Well, in that emerging phase, I needed myself to use strategies to stay calm. I needed to read books and teach those strategies, and I needed to talk about what I'm doing. And as I was doing those things, I wanted to try to anticipate and prevent when those strong feelings were going to come up for my daughter, and intervene immediately. Because in this emerging phase, they're not ready to do this on their own yet. They need us to really monitor and help. Okay. But then we're bridging into this practicing phase. And in this practicing phase, we're going to act it out. And I'm going to be them, and they're going to tell me what to do when I lose all my apples in the apple collecting game. Or they're going to tell me what to do when my tower falls over and I'm frustrated. So they're going to tell me, we're going to pretend, we're going to switch roles. I'll tell them, they're going to pretend. We're doing this practice phase together. And again, when it comes to actually when those strong feelings come up in real life, we're going to try to monitor and intervene early, because they're not going to have those steps yet. Right? We're going to be able to practice them, but we're probably not going to be able to use them when we need them yet. But over time, we will get to that point. And then we move into this coaching phase where we're going to be playing like a what if game before the Strong Start playtime, or we're going to have a little signal to gently remind them. And in this phase, we're starting to give them some more independence. We're monitoring and just intervening when they're unsuccessful. But now they're starting to do it. So they're starting to have a chance of being successful on their own. And then, of course, there is a last phase where it's like, oh man, you're just kind of off and working on other things. But we can keep that learning alive and celebrate what they're able to do now, learn some more strategies, that kind of thing. I've highlighted two phases because I just want to focus that we're always only in two places on this framework at a time. So we're either bridging from showing into practicing or from practicing into coaching, but we're not trying to do all of them at the same time. If we really want to help our kids, we're just kind of focusing on one where they solidly are and bridging into that next one. Okay. So that's the worked example, and I've given you in the handout a worksheet if it's helpful to just to do. Some people enjoy just doing a little bit of planning, so you're welcome to use that. Okay, so we talked about personal social development, and now we're going to talk about group social development. Again, these are the things that make the biggest difference in terms of whether kids feel the most comfortable and confident when they get to school. Not an essential list, but an invitation to think, oh, are there some of these that we could help them develop? Okay. Can they share space and toys with other children? Obviously, 20 of them. There's a lot of sharing space that's involved in kindergarten. Can they suggest ideas for play? That's something that's sometimes new for a lot of kids, depending on their prior experiences. Suggesting, not demanding or expecting, are two different things. Can they listen to the ideas of others, kind of along those same lines? And can they follow some simple rules in groups and when playing games? So those are the things that can make the biggest difference in terms of group social development. And there's some opportunities to practice that. Again, when can I get better at group social development? Well, pretend or dramatic play actually is massive because in pretend and dramatic play, I have to pretend to be somebody else. And there's a lot of self-control and self-regulation is the fancy word for that gets built into that, where I'm becoming somebody else, and I have to make some choices as that other person, not as myself. So it's a really important developmental tool, this pretend and dramatic play. Getting together with another child that's the same age as them is also really helpful for developing group social skills. And same way, even if you're not getting together in a planned way, just going to the playground or pools or water parks, places where there are likely to be other kids that they can play with. Programs with open play time, like Parks and Rec and Strong Start and Family Place, really help. And reading and talking about stories can also make a big difference. In part because when we're reading or talking about a story, it's not our problem. It's the character's problem. So it's kind of like we're back in that pretend low stakes phase. We can talk about somebody else's problem. So those are the top 5 opportunities. Incidentally, when it comes to the play dates and also the visiting the playground, I think I mentioned kids playing with other kids their own age, which is awesome. If your child happens to have a harder time playing with kids their own age, sometimes setting them up with kids either older or younger than them actually helps first because when they're playing with somebody older than them, they might more intuitively become the follower and get used to somebody else leading the play. And when they're playing with somebody younger than them, we can coach them to become the person who is leading the play. And so sometimes kids have a little bit more experience in those age differences than they do right away with kids their own age. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about setting them up. We do want to get them to be having success with kids their own age, but sometimes kids that are slightly different ages can help them set them up for that success. Okay. I'm going to highlight these are just highlighting these things because they're things I've already mentioned. So you'll see there's some repetition in the opportunities. In terms of further growth in social learning and development, we want them to introduce themselves. We want them to recognize and name feelings in others. These are long-term things, just in case they're feeling really good about the things that I've already shared. Begin to solve problems independently, and just really build that positive identity and self-awareness, where they feel confident in what they can do, but also confident that mistakes are part of learning. And being okay with that and not expecting that they're going to be successful the first time they try something new. And just building that expectation of themselves of future growth and learning. Those are the things that really matter when it comes to group social learning and development. So again, these ones on this screen are a little bit longer term, but things we can be sowing the seeds of and helping to nurture right now. We're going to move on to some of the more school curriculum aspects of kindergarten. We're going to talk about language arts, which is our fancy way for reading and fancy word in school for reading and writing. And we're going to talk about math. But I want to share in both of these just a little bit about what the curriculum says, because there's often some surprises for parents. So really in kindergarten, we think about a real strong emphasis on oral language and communication. Reading and writing do come into it, as you'll see in a sec, but the emphasis is on oral experiences and building kids' vocabulary, building kids' communication skills. We do, like I said, do lots of reading experiences, sharing how books work, those basic concepts of print. The books have a front cover that we can open them up. We can read from left to right in English. And so understanding that and giving them lots of experiences with that. We also give them experiences with varied texts. So not just storybooks, but also information texts and poems and songs and other ways of writing language down. We recognize most letters and sounds by the end of kindergarten is the goal. So lots of people are feeling pressure like, oh my goodness, do they have to know the whole alphabet before they get to school? No, they do not. That's actually a big focus of our time in school. And so I want to reassure you of that. As we'll talk about in a sec, it does help if they've got some knowledge of letters and sounds when they're starting school, but they certainly don't need to know all of their letters and sounds already. If they do, fantastic. They'll have other things to learn in kindergarten for sure. But if they don't, we have time to work on that in school. We want them drawing and writing for personally meaningful purposes. That's back to that emergent writing idea. And by the end of school, we'd like them to be adding some words using the letters and sounds that they know. But for now, just doing some drawing to express themselves, adding some pictures and some scribble lines, maybe printing some letters. Those are great first steps. Phonological awareness is the fancy word for becoming aware that language has both meaning but also sounds. And we can notice the sounds of language as well as the meaning of language. So that's the fancy word, phonological awareness, for aware of the sounds of the language. And rhyming is a small but beginning step sometimes, but really where we want to get our kids to in kindergarten is being able to segment words into their sounds and blend words together. So like I can blend the sounds k, at into cat, and I can pull apart dog into d, og. But at the beginning, I'm probably just going to put an at together to make cat. Or when I'm segmenting, I'm going to segment d from dog. What else starts with d? Oh, dad and dinosaur start with d. That kind of work is what we start with when we're heading into school. Okay, so in terms of what are the things that matter, what are the things that help kids feel capable and confident when they get to school? Oral language, 5 or 6 word sentences. If they're speaking in 5 or 6 word sentences, this just helps them being able to express themselves and express their needs. So just notice how long the sentences your kids are using, and if needed, just try expanding them a little bit for them. So restate what they've said into a longer sentence can help them do that. Similarly, can we help them learn new words? Can we notice when their words are maybe a little simpler than they need to be, and introduce a new word that means the same thing but is a fancier word? If we use that expanding vocabulary, we give them a lot of power and control over how they can express themselves. Can they continue a conversation going back and forth? Can they speak in a group and share ideas? And can they ask questions and eagerly explore new ideas? So those are the things that matter. So there might be one of those that resonates as an opportunity. In terms of when children would work on those, some really simple things like walking and driving and talking. I'm really convinced that if we took the first 5 or 10 minutes of each walk or drive to just turn off the radio or turn off the screen in the back seat and just talk about either what we just experienced together, where we're headed, what we're seeing around us as we go. If we just did that, we would boost the amount of oral language that our kids get and the chance for them to have conversations with us. So just taking advantage of those times when we're going somewhere together anyways, let's take some time to talk. Planning new trips and experiences. Now, these don't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be like around the world travel. It can just be going to the river and watching the boats go by, or it can be walking past the construction site in your neighborhood and spending some time noticing what's going on there. But those new experiences bring with them a ton of language opportunities. Playing guessing games are also great for nurturing curiosity and language. Singing songs, children's music can play a big role in supporting vocabulary and sound awareness too. In a way that's maybe not quite as fashionable as it once was. I think it is worth finding some children's entertainers that you don't mind listening to and that your kids enjoy to to play around the house and in the car and those kind of things. And then books, of course, and when we read books, we learn a lot of language that we wouldn't otherwise use in our regular day-to-day spoken language. So books are a great way to develop oral language. There's some, again, further growth. Like these are kind of taking it to the next level. Things like asking questions and eagerly exploring new ideas. Things like rhyming and playing with the sounds in words. Things like having kids tell their own stories are all great steps. Some of you might be wondering, well, what about second language learning? What if we speak a different language at home that's not English? And here's my messages around that. Your first language, whatever your child's first language is a massive asset. And we always want to encourage families to keep developing their home language or languages as much as possible. The way to think about it is speak the most in the language that you feel the most comfortable in. Why? Because then you'll be giving your child the richest language you can, because that's the richest language you've got. And yes, feel free to expose them to the other language, whether that's English or other languages that you have. But spend the most time talking in the language that you feel the most comfortable. And that's okay if you and your partner speak different languages. You can both do that. They don't always have to be hearing the same language. They can learn multiple languages at the same time. It does help if when kids are entering school, if they can use English to greet others and make simple requests and express their own needs. But beyond that, all the language and the knowledge that you help them build up in another language will translate to English once they start to have those experiences in English at school. So the invitation is give your kids the richest language experience you can in the richest language that you know, okay? And build up that as a real strong emphasis, and they will learn the English part of it when they get to school. They'll make the connection to what you taught them in your home language to the language and the words we use for that in English once they experience them at school. But they'll be so much easier for them because they will already have words and ideas and knowledge built up in their home language already stored in their brain. Okay. In terms of reading, the things that help the most, if they can recognize their own name, if they can enjoy books, both when they're read to, but also when they're looking at books independently, and just enjoy talking about books, right? If they can handle books with care, because as you probably know, budgets are limited and it causes people in the system stress when books aren't being looked after and other things aren't being looked after. So if they know how to treat books carefully, if they know how to carefully turn the pages without tearing them, that makes a big difference. And if they can spot letters and words in the environment, they're becoming aware that, oh, these letters and words are all around us. Some kids pick that up very naturally without us needing to point it out to them, but other kids, it really helps for us to be explicit and go, hey, look what's on that sign. It's the same letter as in your name. That type of thing. Look in the grocery store. There's all these signs telling us where things are. Like I said, some kids notice those themselves, but often kids need us to show them what's what. In terms of the top 5 reading opportunities, number one is read, of course. Read is so valuable. And number 2, use your child's printed name around the house. Number 3 would be just pointing out letters and words all around. Like I said, same idea as oral language, when we're out walking or driving, we can be looking for those letters and we can be looking for those signs and talking about what they are. We can notice individual letters and talk about what sounds they make. And we can give kids their own book collection so that they have that experience of looking at books independently. And it also, of course, really helps if they have a time of the day when that is their thing to do, is to look at books independently, whether that's a bit of a quiet time in the afternoon or a bit of a time while you're getting dinner ready, maybe it's book time, or a time right before bed when they can look at books independently before they fall asleep. Something like that. Okay. In terms of further growth in reading, if they can recognize some familiar words, both personally meaningful words, things that matter to them. Maybe they recognize some names or some mom or dad. Maybe they recognize some signs that show the places that they like to go, whether that's stores they like to go to or gas stations that are close to their house that they start to recognize in other places. Just starting to see those familiar words. Become aware of letters and sounds is a good next step. So an initial phase, knowing that there are letters and those letters make sounds is a good level of awareness. And that further growth is, well, I know a lot more letters now, and I know their names and I know the sounds that they make. Doing some conversations about books, like predicting and retelling. Those are also great skills to get some practice in. In terms of writing, just to wrap up this focus on language, writing the things that matter the most is if kids feel like they can use pencils and crayons or felts to draw some recognizable pictures. If they can print some letters before coming to school, then school feels like, hey, I can do this. And similarly, if they can make some attempts to print their name, because 20 of them, one of us, we ask them to print their name a lot. And so even if they can just do the first letter or the first couple of letters to start, that will help us know whose that is, and then they'll feel that much more confident when they're looking at that piece of paper in front of them and being asked to print their name. Okay, so those are the things that make the biggest difference. Some opportunities for that, just having writing tools available, things like felts and crayons and paper or whiteboards even. If you're worried about going through too much paper, encourage writing that's meaningful to your child. Things like signs or lists or cards can make a big difference, and they don't have to be writing whole words. They can just be painting little pictures, or they can be cutting out with scissors and gluing some pictures down to then go back and read those pictures. That's a good first step for where they're at right now. You can do some drawing with your child, sitting down. Maybe you're working on a drawing together and you're both adding things, or maybe you're working on drawings in parallel and they're drawing a tree and you're drawing a tree and you're adding something and they're getting inspired by what you've added and try add it to their drawing, and you're getting inspired by something they've done and add it to yours. So those are great moments too. Just to really encourage you to encourage any attempts they make at writing. Adults often have the initial response of, oh, that's not how we write that, or yeah, good try, but try to avoid that and just celebrate those attempts at meaning making that they're doing at this stage and go, wow, okay, yeah, I see that. A great step is to just ask them, tell me about what you've written, rather than trying to guess yourself, because sometimes when we guess at their drawings or writings, we're not quite accurate. And then just practice printing their name. Like I said, start with just the first letter, then add a couple more, but just to get some practice getting something that they recognize as their name. Okay. So some further growth, these are again taking it to the next level. If they can use drawings or letters and words or letter-like shapes to represent their ideas on paper, if they can create their own stories, whether that's orally or from pictures or using beginning writing, that's fantastic. And if they can tell a story from a picture, then and just lots of practice doing that. They might retell a story that they've been read to, or they might get a wordless picture book and tell and create a story. Those are just great things to be encouraging. Similar to language arts, in math, we're going to talk about what the curriculum contains and what our focus is in kindergarten, and then share the things that help the most. So what the curriculum looks like in kindergarten is we actually just focus on comfort using the numbers up to 10. We're looking for a depth of understanding here. So if we're looking for multiple experiences, making different groups and changing those groups and comparing those groups of, say, 4 to another group of 6, and how are they different or the same? How can we turn the group of 4 into a group of 6? So playing with hands-on materials, but lots of comfort using numbers up to 10. That's our goal in kindergarten. So we also focus on patterning. It's not just about number in kindergarten. We focus on making patterns that repeat with 2 or 3 different things. We focus on describing and sorting three-dimensional objects. So the beginnings of geometry there, where we are looking at objects and talking about whether they have flat sides and whether they have edges and whether they're round. We sort those out into groups and do different sorting with them. We also do measurement in kindergarten, but it's not the kind of measurement where we're getting out our ruler and measuring how many centimeters or inches something is. We're actually just mostly focusing on the language of comparison. So what's longer, what's heavier, what takes longer, as well as not sometimes using non-standard units to measure. So that would look like lining up the blocks and saying, well, how many blocks long is this book? Or which car traveled the furthest? How many blocks did it travel? Let's get those long blocks and lay those out and figure out how far it went and whether it went further than the last time we tried it, or whether it didn't go quite as far. So that's what math looks like in kindergarten. And so the things that help with that are things like counting by rote. So saying the number sequence and counting real objects up to 10. And so that if they can do that before they come into K, then they're really prepared for doing that exploration of, okay, well, what does a group of five look like? Um, if they can also recognize some numbers and then know the number sequence that six comes after five and that seven comes after six. So those are kind of things that will really help if they can do those things heading into kindergarten. In terms of opportunities, I mean, math is really all around us. That's our message for children and families, that there's math when we're investigating the world, when we're counting and comparing, when we're choosing things. Um, and so just using the language of talk when we're describing the things in the world that we're interacting with, when we're offering choices to children, really helps with developing math language and math understanding. Games like card games and board games introduce numbers, introduce the counting and sequencing. Rolling dice helps us recognize some familiar number patterns. Cooking together is a great way to explore math because there's the measurement and the comparison that comes when we're making cookies. We're measuring how much flour and how much sugar. When we're adding the balls, rolling the balls together, or doing the cutouts, which ones are bigger, which ones are smaller. We're doing some estimating too. Oh, how many cookies do we think we'll make? Those kinds of things. Sorting at cleanup time is a great way to practice sorting, which things go together, what are different ways we could sort those things. And comparing, the language of comparison just really is important to be building with our kids. So those are the top 5 opportunities to practice the math skills that will help them feel capable and confident when they get to school. Here's some invitations for further growth, things like counting by rote and counting with real objects up to 10. Here, recognizing some, that's actually, sorry about that. That's actually a repetition of what's in the curriculum. If we can count by rote beyond 10, that's actually one of the things that would lead to some further growth. If we can recognize some numbers and the number sequence, again, beyond 10. So just starting to bridge into those bigger numbers once they've got the numbers 1 to 10 solid. If they can develop some awareness of patterns and what those patterns look like, if they can sort common household objects and sort them different ways, that will set them up for success when we talk about sorting at school. If they have vocabulary, lots and lots of math vocabulary, the language of comparison, that kind of thing. If they have a positive math attitude, you might not be super strong in math yourself, but if they bring a bit of an openness to math, maybe they don't know that you're not super strong yet, keep that part hidden, but just develop this positive outlook towards numbers and math. And if they can print some numbers, whether those are, meaningful opportunities, good reasons to print numbers, whether that's making their own list or making a card for somebody and celebrating their 5th birthday, that kind of thing. Okay. Got 2 more sections and then we'll wrap up. This second to last section is about fine motor skills. We are definitely noticing in schools that kids do not have the same fine motor skills that they used to, and probably because they're not playing as much as they used to, perhaps. We wonder, but it's something to think about and something that we can develop. Fine motor skills, these things matter in terms of their ability to manipulate the materials that we give them at school. So if you see, here's the things that matter. They're there on the list. If they can use that pincer grip is just between their thumb and their first finger. And I'm showing it on the screen if you can see. But if they can use that pincer grip between their thumb and their first finger to play with and to hold writing tools as well as other toys, that helps. If they can trace simple lines and simple shapes on a paper, that helps. If they can copy a shape that somebody's given them to copy, and if they can use scissors to cut, those, then school, when we put out those materials and ask them to use those materials, it'll feel that much more comfortable. In terms of the opportunities, the things that help kids develop those fine motor skills are things like construction toys and materials, like the blocks in the picture that need to be snapped together and pulled apart. Those are very helpful. Art and having art materials out, whether that's modeling like Play-Doh or whether it's felts and crayons and paper. Beading is another great way to develop fine motor skills, and so are puzzles. And the last section is all about self-care. These are the things that when you talk to teachers and when teachers talk to me, they say, make sure you share these with families. So I will make sure I share them with you. But these, again, go a long way towards helping kids feel comfortable and confident when they get to school. And just like all the other things, none of these are must-haves. There will be kids who are still working on some of these when they get to school. And if that's the case, we will develop plans and we will sort it out, particularly if there are things that we know, or there's reasons why these aren't quite in your child's ability yet. We'll develop the plans for that. But in other cases, these are things that we can support our kids with to become more independent with as school approaches. So personal routines, that's just when I wake up in the morning, what do I do? When I come in from being outside, what do I do? When I leave, what do I do? Leave the house, what do I do? So just completing those kind of personal routines. I know what to do at certain times of the day when I'm transitioning from one event to another. So just so they have a sense of independence and ability to carry through the parts that make sense for them to do. Those are important. They set them up for the routines of looking after their own materials and belongings and their learning at school. If they can feed themselves. Now, in lots of families, it's really common for an adult to still feed a child. It varies by culture, but certainly in lots of families, we know that's true. And we're not asking you to stop doing that. It's certainly fine to continue as long as that works for your family and your child. But what we're saying is that when they get to school and it's lunchtime, they won't have an opportunity they won't have somebody who's there feeding them, unless there's a medical reason, which are pretty rare. But other than that, we do expect them to eat themselves. So the question isn't, what does eating look like at home? The question is, will they be able to be independent when they're asked to be at school? Are they comfortable with that? And even if your child is really used to feeding themselves, one thing that's really helpful is to think about how they will eat at school, because their lunch kit might be different. The sequence of things you want them to eat might be different. So a real tip that we share with all families is to have some practice lunches before lunch starts at school, so that you're packing a lunch in a lunch kit for them and then talking it through with them, go through opening up that lunch bag and opening up the containers. Which containers should they open first? What should they eat first? What do they do with the containers and the lids when they're finished? So just having some practice lunches will really help them feel comfortable feeding themselves when they get to school. Along the same lines, dressing themselves, that's good to be able to do that. And not saying that you can't help. When my daughters were 5, we certainly had a lot of mornings when I was like, I'm just going to help you get dressed because that is going to get us out the door faster. But let's say they're at school and they've slid down the slide and they need to go change when they get to the washroom, and they've got their pants and their spare change of underwear, which hopefully are packed in their backpack or somewhere else safe, then they will feel confident getting those pants and their clothes back on and get back to class. So think about that. Are they able to do those things independently? Same things along the same lines as putting on their jacket. Maybe they need a little help starting their zipper sometimes, but can they get going towards independent on that? And if you think about it, think about the clothes that you're sending your children in and how we're setting them up for success. Because sometimes clothes are really cute, but not easy to get on or off. So maybe prioritizing things that they can put on themselves when you're choosing clothes for them at the beginning of school. Toilet independently. They will need to use the washroom on their own. Now, again, if there are reasons that your child needs a plan and support, we put those types of things in place. But in general, we do have kids be independent in the washroom. And so helping them get more independent. And a great way to do that is to just have them, let's say they're not fantastic wipers yet, most 5-year-olds aren't, but to have them do the first wipes on their own. And then you could still give a helping wipe afterwards. But they're getting better and better at being independent. Hand washing will help with getting those hands clean after using the washroom, as well as other times of the day, help keep the spread of germs to a minimum. That'll keep them healthier. It'll also keep you healthier because they're pretty good at spreading germs. And then the last piece is just cleaning up after themselves. So they used to tidying up their area after they've been, whether that's after mealtime, after playtime, and they just used to doing that before they transition to the next thing. All right. So like I said, the invitation was to choose an area Choose one thing. Maybe it's one or two goals that you have within that area, or maybe one or two goals in different areas, but just choose one and just think about how you might meet your child where they're at and help take that next step. Using that process of I'm going to make sure you know what success looks like. I'm going to show it to you and model it for you. Then we're going to practice it, and then I'm going to be there to help and coach you along when you're starting to do it independently. So that's the invitation to just take some time and do that and work through things that way. Remember, whether they can do a whole bunch of those things or whether they can't do very much of any of them, it's the same invitation. Just choose one or two things to get started with, see how that goes. And then if you're able to, you can pick up other things. But no matter what, anything that you do will help them feel more capable and confident when they get to school. All right, so just to wrap up, I just really appreciate you spending this time with me. I hope that it's been helpful. This is kind of the summary of all of the top messages that have been woven through, because it can be hard to make sense of all of that. Okay, well, that's all fine, Jason, but what do our days look like? So here's what I think. If our days look like this, then you can feel really, really solid about how you're spending your time and that it's really supporting them to be on track for kindergarten. So if every day includes this daily dollop of connecting time with your child, lots of time to nurture and strengthen your relationship, lots of time to use talk and rich language and ask questions and have them ask questions, lots of unstructured play where they're just playing on their own and doing their own thing, whether that's outside or inside or different ways, and whether that's physical play and then physical play too, being outside moving or inside jumping, like things that get their bodies moving are really helpful for them. And then reading together. Reading together is so fantastic, both for nurturing your relationship, but also for developing those early literacy skills and language. And to do all those things, we probably have to keep screens to an hour or less. That might feel like a lot to some folks, but that is the pediatrician's recommendation. And it's not because, I don't think because screens are inherently bad. It's just that screen time gets in the way of the connecting time and the talk time and the unstructured play and the physical play. These things that are on the screen are just way more supportive of your child's growth and development in a way that screen time just isn't. And then the last thing, if we mix those big things together for a complete day, we can sprinkle in these extra goodies, which are great for their growth and learning too. If they have time playing with other kids their age, if they have time a few times a week in adult-led groups, if they play some games with simple rules, and if they have artwork, do some artwork with paper and writing tools, then if we're doing all those things, we're kind of really on our way towards just really feeling like we're supporting our kids in the best way we can. So like I said, I'm really hoping that feels affirming. I'm hoping that it lines up with the things that you want to be doing, the things that you're already doing. And I also hope that somewhere in there that you see some opportunity about things you can do to just pave that path to be that much more successful as September approaches. So looking forward to seeing you perhaps at one of the pre-kindergarten opportunities. Maybe it's called Starting with Stories at your school, or maybe they call it Welcome to K or Kindergarten Open House. But I hope you take advantage of those. And again, just that invitation to keep visiting the school and the playground over the summer. Talk about your child's school as their school. As September does approach, do be thinking about sleep and making sure they're getting enough sleep. The pediatricians definitely say 10 to 12 hours, more kids on the 12-hour end than 10. So be thinking about how we can get a really good sleep routine so your kids have the sleep they need. And just that final invitation to just be mindful of programming too much in the fall and having too many out-of-school activities, because they're going to probably need that time to rest and recharge with you. And you're also probably going to want that time to reconnect with them and enjoy that time with them so that you really can enjoy this process of starting school and enjoying school together. So I hope that's been helpful. I will wish you a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever it happens to be for you. Again, please be in touch if there are things that we can support you with. We are very happy to do that. Thanks so much.